Hello and welcome to this very exciting Silmarillion film podcast. We have got a really exciting discussion. We've got the end of Gorgal. We've got spiders. We have Game of Thrones style politics in Narghathron. And particularly exciting, in addition to the usual crew, including Corey and myself and our head writers, Nick and Marie, we are joined by one of our staff writers,
Excellent.
Dylan Rodriguez Curry. And he's going to be telling us about the script that we're looking at tonight, which is very exciting. It's always fun having guests. So welcome, Dylan.
Yeah, welcome, Dylan. Thanks for joining the team.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're excited here to be filling the void that exists in the calm before the storm, before Rings of Power. So
yes.
If you're looking for pre-Third Age Tolkien content, this is really the only legit game in town for now.
Absolutely.
Until
And
Corey
I'm telling you,
competing with us.
I am pretty sure that as the Rings of Power series, seasons are going to go on, we are going to see more and more. This is a wild prediction on my part. Based on data, however, that we're going to see more and more ways in which the Film project has been cannily anticipating
Yes.
the Prime Video folks in our decisions. They are humbly following in our footsteps already in several key story and characterization decisions that we made in our adaptation process. Most prominently, of course, proved already is the PTSD Galadriel concept, which, of course, we were doing years ago before they, when they were still pitching their show, we were already doing scripts with PTSD Galadriel. Anyways, I think it will be fun. It's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. But yes, in the meantime, here we are in the first stage. Still, as at the beginning of our project, the only people ever doing this kind of a full adaptation of first stage material. So that's pretty exciting. We'll see how long that lasts. We may have competition before we're done, but for now, we are still the only first stage adaptation out there. So, all right, we're gonna jump to episode 3 pretty soon. Some announcements coming up. First of all, yes, there's my book, Exploring the Lord of the Rings, Part 1. So if you go to our new Signum Press website, you can get access to that. We're publishing my book progressively through the Signum University Press. This is a sort of a new and experimental thing that I'm doing, where you can either buy the book in advance and get early access to all of my chapters as they drop, as I'm producing them as they go along, or you can join my author circle and actually be a part of the creative process itself. And you can be getting updates from me on what's going on, and you can be giving feedback on the book as I go. So that's it's a really fun and sort of experimental thing that we're doing with the press that we're getting started on, and I'm really excited about. Upcoming moots, so many things happening and going on. We've got our next Signum Regional Moot is in Denver, Colorado, Mountain Moot in September 24th. Then 2 in October, Middle Moot and New England Moot, 2 weeks in a row. So we're in Kansas City, Missouri, and then here in New Hampshire. I left an error again from an older thing. Derry, New Hampshire, technically, not Durham, but it's all right. We shifted a couple towns over in New Hampshire here. And then SoCal Moot in Carlsbad, California, down near San Diego on November 5th. And then, of course, getting ready for Osmoot down in Australia in January, which is going to be very great fun. I would also add in the middle of that, on the 22nd of October, the Prancing Pony podcast is hosting its conference out in Milwaukee at Marquette University on October 22nd. So it's the gauntlet of moots there in October. Lots of moot action in October, 3 weeks in a row. I'm going to be in Milwaukee speaking at the Prancing Pony Moot as well, so I'm looking forward to that also. Anyway, yeah, It's going to be great fun. I see that Ilana is here, one of our hosts of Osmoot down in Australia. So really looking forward. I'm hoping to get a chance to hang out with Philip Menzies when I'm down there too. Really excited to get the chance to meet Philip in person. Yeah, lots of anticipation for Osmoot. Already starting to get excited about that now. Beginning to approach our first ever Southern Hemisphere moot at Signum. Going to be great fun. All right. I think. Okay, the one other thing. Sorry, the one other thing I did want to mention in addition is just to draw people's attention to the new show that Maggie Park and I are doing called Rings and Realms. This is going to be our analysis show of the Rings of the Prime Video Rings of Power show. We're going to be dropping that on like Wednesdays or Thursdays at the week after the show comes. So it's not going to be an immediate reaction show. It's going to be a deep dive analysis show where we really think carefully through the episode and look at some of the really fun Tolkien stuff that's going on in those episodes. So you can look for those. I urge you to go and subscribe to the Rings and Realms YouTube channel. And you can follow us on various social media outlets as well to get updates and see some of the fun stuff that we're going to be posting here in the next couple of weeks. So go to Rings and Realms, search for Rings and Realms on YouTube, and you'll find it. And that's going to be a great fun show. So I hope that you will check that out. All right, now the map. As always, we pause to look at them. Okay, here's my new thing today, Marie. My new thing today is the Ravines of Taeglin down here. Is there... This is just a Turin thing. This is where Glaurung is going to get stabbed, right? That's why this is on the map, right?
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. It's one of those... It's an oddity in its way, right? And we got the Fens of Sirion and stuff, but it's a different kind of thing. Just to be like, oh, and here the river runs into ravines. Like, I bet you there's a bunch of other places where others of these rivers run into ravines, right? In various places, maybe even particularly steep and narrow ones, right? But this is clearly a Turin plot anchor, right? So that you can, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the River Narog probably it has some ravines in it.
You'd think, yeah, for sure.
Based on how it's described. And yet the reason why that's called on the map is so we know where Glaurung was going.
Exactly. And it is really interesting when you think about of course, we're a ways away still from thinking about the Turin story. But it is really fun to think about how, the Turin story is really a very localized story. I mean, you've got like all the stuff right here, right? You've got, you've got Brethil, the ravines, Amon-Rûdh, Narghathron, all, the crossings of Taeglin, of course, which is an important place also in his story. All that stuff right there. I know, obviously, he's up in Dorlom and everything as well in his birth. But yeah, you can see all these things kind of clustered right here where he spent so much of his life. Anyway, okay, sorry. That's my little map contemplation. I can't go by the map without contemplating it. We'll come back and refer to this. So we're now up to the third one. So one of the things that I'm kind of interested in, one of the reasons I like this table here, is to kind of look at the sort of the through lines here. Like what have our A plots been all the way through, right? So far our A plots have been Sauron, Thuringwethil, and now Beren, right? So we've had two bad guy A plots, right, for the first two episodes of the season. So this episode becomes a kind of transition episode in that way, where Beren is the center, obviously surrounded by evil up there in Dorthonion. But that's one sort of interesting trend. And of course, we've seen the B plot has been Beren, right, to this point. So, Beren has been the B plot for the first two episodes, and now he moves up to the A, whereas the Feyenorians and Narghathron, right, Narghathron has been like the C plot all the way through so far, right? So we're kind of simmering the the Narghathron plot, and it's going to finally rise to the surface right when Beren and Luthien get there. Anyway, okay, all right. So just glancing at the table here. By the way, in the script for this episode, I was actively avoiding the frame because I was like, spoilers. I haven't thought about the frame yet. So I want to be looking at the frame, like the script of the frame and stuff a little bit more collectively. Because I felt like, I don't want to jump into because this is the first one that has had frame script, if I'm recalling correctly, right? 1 and 2 didn't have it?
2 had.
2 had, right, okay. Oh, right, the Arwen stuff. The Arwen stuff. Yeah. Okay, I was forgetting that. Yeah, so we can... Right, so we just have to... So I guess I was just missing my anchor in number 1. When we were starting in with Aragorn, I was like, wait a second. We would have had some Aragorn stuff from episode 1, right? Yeah, anyway. So I feel like there's a loop that needs to be closed there somewhere. But anyway, we'll figure it out. Okay, anyhow. All right. Overview of episode 3. So this is the big Beren leaves Dorthonion is the primary thing that's going on here. We're starting with his recovery of the Ring of Bari here, right? As I recall, Marie, episode 2 ended with his discovery of the corpses, right? So he returns to the camp and finds everybody dead. But that was it. That was the sort of fade to black at the end of episode 2. So now we're starting with his vengeance on Gorgal.
We do show the graves in the coda of episode 2.
Okay.
But yes.
Right. Right, which gives a little bit of closure to the story of to like Bari here, there at the very end. But okay, so we start with the vengeance, and then we have the departure. We'll come back to that, but I want to get a picture of the sort of the balance of things here. So that's our primary plot. Then we've got Narghathron and Doriath. So Celegorm and Curufin, we have the beginnings. Really, this is sort of the beginnings of their political machinations, right? This is the very start of Celegorm and Curufin starting trouble, which I was really glad to see that we were doing this here, because one of the things that's awkward, I find awkward. Well, there are a lot of moments like this in the Silmarillion because of the kind of narrative it is, right? Because there's so much of the Silmarillion, again, just based on the literary structure of it, the way it's this kind of plot summary, historical overview kind of approach to things. We don't get a lot of the connective tissue in these stories, right? Like, we're told something happens, and clearly a lot of things would have had to happen to build up to this, and we just don't see it, right? We're just kind of, by the nature of the story, it just sort of asks us to accept that, like, trust us, this makes sense at the time, right? I mean, I'm talking about the Tolkien's text here. That's the way that story works. And an example that I would give would be the usurpation of Narghathron, right? I always find when I'm reading the Silmarillion, it requires suspension of disbelief, right? I'm always sitting there saying, like, okay, I'm going to trust, Tolkien is telling me that the people of Narghathron are siding with Celegorm and Curufin against Finrod, right? Okay. I'm willing to invest in that. I'm willing to believe in that, but I don't feel it. We're not given any reason in the story to understand why that would happen, why they would make that choice. That is just, it's one of those things that kind of comes out of nowhere, and we're really sort of left guessing. And so I'm really excited to see some of that connective tissue happening here, with the beginning, not the beginnings, but with the further development of the Celegorm and Curufin plot with Finrod there. And now in Doriath, the Anile thing. That was really cool. This was the biggest surprise to me, either because we hadn't talked about it or because I had forgotten. Because I didn't remember that, closing the loop on Anile there, which I think that's a great idea.
Also totally forgot about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, did we talk about that, or did you guys add that in?
We had talked about having Anile be the traitor in
Yeah.
Tyrion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that part you would
Exactly.
Know about.
Yeah. That part I knew about.
I think we were like, yeah, and then we'd have to have the fallout of it, but the details of the fallout came out in the script discussion, so this is new to you.
Okay. I thought it was new to me, but I'm never quite sure. Sometimes I say that and it turns out it was my suggestion in the first place. But yeah. So, okay. Yes. Involving, Melian, I think is a great move, right? This is a great move that helps us to establish more of Melian, more of the inside of Doriath as well. I mean, we talked about the priority of doing that a little, getting at least a glimpse of Luthien before Beren, right? And seeing some of the inside of Doriath there in at the beginning, before the Beren and Luthien story kind of happens. Getting another chance to see that and sort of seeing Melian at work, seeing Melian in that more like late Galadriel role, right? To again, to sort of help set up some more of that stuff. I think that's she's a very natural choice for this. Is the plan, by the way, for Anile to go, he's going to go off and kind of become a hermit, and we're never going to see him again until he's raising Tuor? Like, is Tuor basically like pulling Anile out of retirement, essentially?
Probably. We haven't dealt with the fallout with his son yet. So Elrond hasn't learned the truth of what happened.
He's with Fingon, right?
Right. So there will likely be some appearance of Anile between now and Tuor, like maybe in the Nirnith
to reconcile things with his son, yeah.
Or not reconcile.
Or not reconcile, right? Yeah.
But he will probably
presumably he's going to have to reconcile with his son fairly soon, because presumably his son is going to die at the Nirnith Arnodiad.
Correct.
You'd think, right?
Yes.
I mean, like most people are going to die. Yeah.
Elrond is with Fingon.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Not gonna survive.
Yeah, no, that's just what I was thinking. I was assuming that. That's why I was assuming that would be the end of him. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Great. Well, let's dig into some of the individual stories. Dylan, I want to hear from you more. Now we've kind of set up the big picture, and Maria's done her duty of reminding me the things that I'm supposed to remember, but usually don't. I want to talk about some of the details of how you approached this story in this outline, because I was particularly interested in the approach to the vengeance at the beginning, the way in which that gets kind of broken up, right? And the way that kind of falls. Tell me about that. I mean, it was on the one hand, it would seem like somebody who knows nothing at all about this kind of thing, right? I would come in and be like, hey, so big fight scene at the beginning, right? Beren comes back. This is a big action scene, right? Beren comes back, kills all the orcs. Well, not all of them, but he, kills the orcs, takes the hand, runs off. Anyway, there's an action sequence. The approach to that was a little heterodox and intriguing, right? Tell me about what you were wanting to accomplish in the way that you approached Beren approaching recovering the ring.
Right. So one of the big things we needed to do with this episode was kind of take what we lost by cutting Beren's 4 years in Dorthonion as a solitary outlaw, and then putting them into his killing of Gorgol, and then his coming through Nond and Gortheb. So basically what we did was we decided to frame his dealing with his grief in a
Right.
different lens.
Right.
So we start out with the whole, like, he's uh, one of the things we were trying to figure out was, how do we fit all this stuff into here?
Right.
Which is why we put the killing scene right at the beginning, because we were not sure exactly how to fit all the rest of it in to the rest of the episode, and particularly those first three scenes, the killing, Tarnailuin, and the Peaks of the Arid Gorgoroth, that are we had to fit those in, and we weren't quite certain how. So by getting the killing done like outright, we were able to really, during the Nantan Gortheb and the grave bits, we were able to like dig into Beren's trauma and his past and his relationship with his father and all that. And that was the reasoning behind putting that scene at the front. It allowed us more freedom with how we dealt with it down the line.
Yeah. What were some of the elements, and again, Nick and Marie, you guys can jump in on this too from, an outline perspective and everything, but what were some of the elements that you were thinking about, as you say, the 4 years as a one-man show in Dorthonion, which we're not cutting so much as radically compressing, right? And at least that's what I tell myself. But very radically compressing. But what were some of the things? One of the terms that I use to try to think of this kind of stuff through, right, is to say, like, okay, what is the job of what job is this doing, right? So like in the story of Beren, what job, what jobs does that time in Dorthonion accomplish, right? As a reader, when you're reading the story, what effect does that little segment of the story have? And are there ways in which we can bring in those elements, that we can, do those jobs in the story in other ways here? And I know that we talked about this a little bit. I know that this is one of the kind of pressures on episode 3, right, in this season. So can you guys talk a little bit about that? Like what some of those jobs were, like what were some of the things that you felt we really needed to capture from that segment of Beren's career, and how were we trying to kind of push that into this script for this episode?
Right. So the first the main job is of at least how we imagined it in the original, with those 4 years in Dorthonion, was we had Beren as solitary outlaw is kind of his way of working through this, his father and all his, companions dying. So we had this method of grief, and in the original Silmarillion, Beren's way of dealing with that is, taking revenge by killing all of his father, or all evil in Dorthonion.
Right.
And
so
he's
going to remain and be the one-man wrecking crew until they drive him out. Right. Yeah.
Right. So we took the vengeance job and put it into the beginning, but then we still had to like figure out a way for Beren to like work all this out within himself. So we took that job, and I don't remember quite how we expressed it during the script discussion. I remember having this discussion. I don't quite remember the words we used to describe it, but we have so we take his dealing with his trauma bit and put it into the Nantan Gortheb bit by, in the script we have these fairly literal, somewhat representations of his grief in his head with hallucinations and stuff.
Right.
But the and so that's so the dealing with everything there had stuff. And if Nick and Marie want to add anything to that about why we did that, you can.
Yeah.
Some of the other jobs that were happening in the 4 years in Dorthonion is Beren, the friend of all the little
Friend of
creatures.
animals. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So there are elements of that in episode 3, lightly, and
Primarily the
there'll be
dog.
Right. There'll be a little bit more of that in episode 4. So we've pushed that forward into the Doriath story.
Right. Right. Which I actually really kind of like, because that enables Luthien to sort of witness it, right? So
that's how we're going to show the audience.
Yeah, because again, this is another thing that I was like, it's all there, like in the Silmarillion, like it's all, but it's not connected, right? So we have like, Beren became the friend of the animals over here. Beren meets Luthien, right? And they kind of hang out for a while. And then over here you have Beren tells Huon all about how, or Luthien tells Huon all about how Beren is the friend of animals, right? And it's like, what did like, how does she know? Like, I mean, was he just like, well, let me tell you about all my animal friends? So like, is this like their conversation on their first date? Like, how does it? So yeah, having her see it so that when we show Luthien telling Huon, she is like bearing witness to what she has seen with her own eyes is, I think, going to be, that's going to be good. So I like that choice. And the dog is at least a little bit of a stand-in.
We're at least making it not come out of nowhere. So yeah, the friend of animals, the dealing with the grief and the vengeance against all the creatures of Morgoth was what we thought the most important part of that time period.
Sure.
And then the kind of secondary effect is that Beren is supposed to become an outlaw in his own name and get a bit of a reputation so that all the villains know who he is.
Yes.
And we're going to need a little bit of that later. So we need to at least put pieces in place that they can figure out who he is.
Right.
Based on what's already happened.
Yeah. So you're right. I had been thinking about that one, but you're right. His reputation is an important element there.
Yeah, so we're going to have to use the Ring of Farah here to connect Beren to his father and basically give Beren the reputation of the outlaws that was established.
Right. Now, remind me, because this is just how unretentive my memory is. In the conversation in episode 2 among the outlaws, right? What was Beren's posture there again in that conversation? In their like, so what are the plans moving forward conversation that they had? What was Beren's posture?
So Beren's position is essentially, we're going to stay until we get everybody out.
We're going to stay and get everybody out, right? He was dedicated to remaining, right? Okay.
Yeah. And there's a certain amount. Yeah. There's a certain amount of, we're going to kill all the orcs.
Yes.
Because he mentions a couple of times, oh no, we killed all. Like he's super gung ho about killing orcs. Also.
Yeah, I remember the delivery of that, like, we killed them all line in episode 1 that we did it at Mythmoot. That was really fun.
So that's so that's part of his persona. He's very mission focused. He's a little grim. There's a little bit of Bard the Bowman in him, right?
Right.
He's essentially, he's ready to, if he's going to meet an end, he's going to go to Valhalla. He's sure of it, right?
Right.
And also, another thing that we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose was Beren's competence, because he spends a lot of the story kind of being shoved along by other people, right? Finrod helps him get as far as Tolsirian.
And repeatedly rescued by his girlfriend. Yes.
Exactly. Right. And, That's the story.
Yeah,
right?
And like no shame in that. I mean, given who his girlfriend is. So yeah, but yes, we don't want him to just look like a weenie who's along for the ride on this whole show.
Right. And the 5 years survival by himself as the lone outlaw in Dorthonion certainly does that. Right.
Yeah.
And gets us to a place where Luthien possibly has already heard of him by the time he shows up in Doriath. And so we've lost that. So we got to make sure that we remind the audience, which we've shown a couple of times previously also, but we're going to remind the audience, this guy's okay. Like, he knows what he's doing.
Yes. Yeah. No, and you're right. I mean, and Marie, coming back to the reputation point that you were making too, this is also the chief opportunity to establish Beren's reputation with the viewers, right? I mean, he's been a really bit character in the first 2 episodes. I mean, he's had speaking roles in both of the first 2 episodes, but they've been small speaking roles. He's been one of the secondary, he's been like the second or third most important character in the B plot in the first 2 episodes, is where he's been. So this is his moment. Right now, this is all about Beren, and I agree. We need to, ideally, we want Beren to be high in people's estimation at the end of this, right? He needs to be a big deal. That's a real challenge. Going from very little to, hero status by, in one episode is going to be tricky. Okay, but anyway, there we go. So that's a big job that this stuff needs to do. Okay, now the dog gets sent away, but we're gonna see the dog again, right? The dog. Okay, just checking. Gotta check in on the dog, right? I mean, everyone is scarred by this dog in season 4, so or 5.
We promise a catastrophic story for the dog.
That's it. I can't wait. I am on tenterhooks about the dog story. This is like one of my chief focus points in season 6. Like the secret, and the irony is that like the secret hero of season 6 is a dog that isn't even Huan, right? I mean, that's the
It's the rat from Avengers Endgame.
Right. Exactly. So that's I can't wait. Jason's suggesting he's going to show up in Rivendell with Bill the Pony. Yeah.
There's some deliberate Bill the Pony overtones to this dog storyline.
What could be better? That's going to be great. Karita says, I'm expecting a Bill the Pony level of happy ending. That was one of my low-key most fun moments at Comic-Con. I was talking with a group of people on the convention floor, and this one guy who had not read the books. He'd only seen the movies, right? And we were talking about Bill the Pony. And he was like, yeah, the sad thing is we never find out what happens to Bill the Pony. And I'm like, oh, you want to know what happened to Bill the Pony? And he's like, yeah. And I told him, and he's like, that's the best thing ever. Oh man, he loved it. It's just like the experience of being able to show to someone who loved the story and was invested in the character of Bill the Pony, but didn't know what happens with, about the joyous reunion and getting to kick Bill Ferny and everything, right? Oh man, he was so happy. And it was just, I felt so privileged to be able to share the history of Bill the Pony. That's awesome. Okay. So I'm looking forward to Nidal the dog. All right. So I trust you guys implicitly that that's going to pay off splendidly. Now there's a couple other things we got to figure out here. One, his departure to leave. Why does he go across the arid Gorgoroth? yeah, that was one thing that felt, I was like, maybe I'm just reading fast and I kind of like, it didn't have the impact that it was supposed to have and it's my fault, which is very possible. But I wasn't feeling like the compelling reason. Like there's several perfectly good paths out of Doriath that don't involve crossing an uncrossable mountain range filled with giant spiders. And then, like, seriously, this is a path. He's taking the path of most resistance, right, out of Doriath. And I wasn't feeling that like the reasons for doing that were like super obvious. His decision to go south, made sense. But like, especially after the conversation in episode 2, right? That was all about, are we going to stay in Dorthonion or are we going to go through the pass and go down to Brethil where our families are, right? Those are the two obvious courses for them to take. And so given that Beren makes the decision, I got to leave, right? The like overwhelming presumptive thing has got to be that he's going to go south to Brethil, right through the pass, like his father was talking about doing and they decided not to do, but now he's going to do. So if he's going to both leave, if he's going to do neither thing, right? If he's going to be like, see, none of the above, I'm going to go on a path untrodden for very, very good reasons, right? That is, there are very good reasons why that path is untrodden, right? He's going to need an even better reason to go on that path. So why are we crossing Ered Gorgoroth?
Right. Oh,
yeah.
So
go ahead. Yeah.
The start, like he's going south, obviously, to Brethil. But he's trying to stay hidden. So he's not going to go across the plain of Dorthonion. Okay. He goes up the Ered Gorgoroth and is going from where he is to cross along it with the mountains.
Okay.
I think it's past the Pass of Anach and down the Mindeb. I said, but I don't quite remember specifically.
Turning to the map. Okay, so he's all right, so he's not going to the pass of Anach, which is the obvious path towards Brethil, right? But he's not going there. He's going to go the other way around, all the way around?
Right, no. He's going towards the pass of Anach still.
Okay, he's still going towards Anach, right?
He's still going towards Anach along the Ered Gorgoroth, and then down on the either at or on the other side of the Pass of Anach, he's going to descend and follow the Mindeb to Brethil.
Okay, right.
But then he ends up going further into Ered Gorgoroth than he intends, ends up seeing Doriath across the way and is drawn there, in a very Tolkien way.
Yeah, so I liked that element, that like, hey, it's that sense of like, that like fate is leading you in that direction. I'm thinking about like, it reminded me of Aragorn seeing Gondor from a distance for the first time. There's that sense of like, my heart tells me that like this is the direction I must go and whatever. Like, so I liked that element of it, though that by itself still didn't seem to be enough to justify the like, therefore I'm going to go the direct route, right? Like that would seem at the very least to have been an unwise choice in pathfinding on the way. That could certainly, getting there would be more certain and probably quicker to go around by the pass. In other words, one of the things that I'm feeling here is that, because there's two things that we have cut or radically compressed, right? One is Beren's time in Dorthonion. The other is the army that's sent after him, right? We get a whole army with Sauron at its head that invades Dorthonion to find him in the book, right? And I have no objection to the decisions that we've made to not do that exactly that way, right? But one of the costs of that is that we still do need a way, I think, to force Beren against his will, practically, to go, like, because you've got to think, it's like, you're only going to go across the arid Gorgoroth if you're literally facing death as the only alternative, right?
So this is where I have to remind you that you
no,
specifically
this is all going to be
told
my
us
fault. Yeah, okay, I know. It usually is. It usually is.
That you did not want to see Beren driven from Dorthonion by an army.
By an army, yeah. No, that's awkward. I know exactly.
And
but yet,
therefore,
you wanted a positive choice.
You wanted it to be Beren's decision, and that he wasn't forced out.
Yeah.
Because being forced out wouldn't be a choice, and you wanted him to make a choice here.
I did say that.
Now, the choice can be made under duress. We can add some duress back into his choice.
A little bit of duress, just a touch of duress.
All right. I
no.
feel like there's a few pieces of information that I want to make sure that we're keeping in mind, because when the viewer is watching this is all happening a lot faster, and it's a lot more present than when we're reading it in text in a script, right?
Yeah.
One thing that we've been building since episode 1 really is the increasing presence of the enemy in Dorthonion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is getting increasingly difficult for anybody to move around through Dorthonion at all, right? And that's something that we've been working on since episode 1. Like, in each episode, it gets harder and harder. Like, in episode 1, the 13 of them are able to move around pretty safely. They're able to rescue people and move slowly.
The rescue, and then go with the refugees,
right.
Travel with refugees in tow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in episode 2, they're only going out in twos, really. Right. Like, you don't see the whole group of them going out anywhere. There's one time where there's several of them in one place, and that's when they go to rescue a group of people that Thorngwethel has already rooted out and taken away. Right. So the increased tension in Dorthonion helps create this pressure that you're describing,
right?
And I believe in the text of the script, Beren specifically suggests that Ered Gorgoroth will hide them from anybody who's looking for them.
Right.
So getting all the way to the Pass of Anak, which would require, because we've already established that to get to the Pass of Anak from the area where they've been staying, they have to basically go up and over quite close to where the old fortifications of the Elvish settlements in Dorthonion were,
right?
Which are now super haunted, right?
Right.
By not just Sauron's elf spirits, but like the ones that got away too, right?
Right.
So the land of Dorthonion is essentially closed to Beren. Now,
yes. By the way,
whether we've effectively done that,
right? This is also a really good setup to, like, we're getting on a Tower Nufuin trajectory here, right? We're like proto Tower Nufuinizing, Dorthonion, which is good. It will make that seem a little bit less out of left field, right? When we're like, oh, and by the way, Dorthonion is now, a magical haunted forest, right? Ideally, after these first 3 episodes, our viewers will be like, well, yeah, I mean, it was mostly there already, right? It's So, right. No, so I like that. I like that. And spies, do we still have bats? Thorngwethel's not around. Well, she still is. She's still there? No, she flew back. We left her in Tolsirian, but
yes.
But we can still have, she's still alive, so we can still have her bats and everything. And so therefore the surveillance web there in Dorthonion would be, again, Nick, to kind of picking up on what you were saying, that it's not as safe as it was. And would there be a danger of him? Would he be afraid of like leading the enemy down into Brethil? Basically, would there be a problem with that?
Yeah. And that might be something that we can add a line about that. Dennis asks if the issue is, the time in showing the army. The reality is that the army is already there. We've shown the heavy work presence in episode 2. Yes. So what we've done is we've essentially moved that earlier rather than having it happen in specific response to Beren. It's happening to Beren personally. Barahir's band. Right.
And to the like investment of Dorthonion, establishing that as a bad guy headquarters basically under Sauron. So okay. So I think if there were to be a more explicit sort of self-sacrifice element, that would help me here as well. I think it's a way to kind of compromise in some way between the negative and the positive choice element.
So if he's still protecting someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, like I'm going to cross over Aragorn, not because I think that's a good plan, right? Not because I don't care, nor because I have some kind of death wish, or because I'm ignorant or whatever. The positive choice is good. I want it to be a positive choice. But again, if he's like, I want to go south. Oh, hey, haunted, impassable mountain range. That looks like just the way. I think I'll go that way. There's probably giant spiders there. All the better. Like obviously that's not what he's thinking or saying, but we don't want it to feel in any way like that, right? He needs to be like, well, crap, I have to cross Ered Gorgoroth, and this is going to not be a picnic, right? This is going to be this is the worst idea ever, but I embrace it.
I
right?
can't afford to be followed.
Yeah, exactly. I can't lead people down into Brethil. I can't be, I can't do that. And also, but I'm going south, right? And that's where I think the element of the positive choice could really come in, right? If his choice is, okay, again, obviously the obvious plan A is I'm going to Brethil, right? I'm taking the Pass of Anach to Brethil. That's not even a choice. It's the only thing for him to do in a sense, now that everybody else is gone. And now that the mission in Dorthonion is clearly done, there's nothing else on his agenda except going to Brethil through the Pass of Anach. But if he can't do that, now he has a choice, right? If Anach and Brethil, at least in any kind of direct route, are closed off to him, well, now he could go a couple different ways, right? If he's just trying to lead the enemy to escape, A, and B, lead the enemy off in like any other direction than straight to their community, their new community in the Forest of Brethil, he could go lots of different directions. So why south, right? Why south? Why would he be willing to go?
They'd be crazy to follow him.
They'd be crazy to follow him, right? But again, or they're going to think he's dead, right? They're going to give him up for dead if he goes that way, right? But again, it's not because it's practical. At the end of the day, there would be a calling that he would feel to the south, right? He would be being beckoned by Doriath in this sense that his fate awaited him there. And so he's going to be determined, like, I'm going south, right? And since I can't go through Anach, I'll go over Ered Gorgoroth, even though that's going to be really hard, but I'm willing to do that because that's what needs to happen. So, but I do think that one other element, the thing that was bothering me was not that he went south at all, but yes, it was why he didn't go to Brethil, like why that wasn't his plain purpose all the way along. That seemed to have been rejected by him a little too swiftly for my senses, if you see what I mean by that. But a little bit of that's just what they will be expecting of me, and I could be, if I were to be pursued, would I, lead my pursuers straight into the unprepared, settlement
refugees.
Of the refugees and the wives and children, of Ladros, So no, I'm not going to do that. If I'm going to run, I'm going to run in a direction they don't expect. That's a classic Tolkien move anyway. I'm going to cross the Ered Gorgoroth because that's what they would least expect. So anyway, I think that I think that would work. It's a good compromise between, as I say, the positive and negative choice.
I like all this. I'm just trying to figure out what we want to do with the dog in this case, because
dog's still the interlocutor, like, you know.
Right,
the dog's the turning point.
Like the dog's gotta be. Are we thinking of having this choice be made in the Arid Gorgoroth scene or in the Turnailoan scene? Because it seems like this would be a choice made during the Turnailoan scene. Like, you know, I'm going to go south. I'm not going to follow the normal route to the Pass of Anach. But if he knows he's going to cross the Arid Gorgoroth, then he's going to leave the dog behind in Turnailoan. He's not going to like even start the dog on the journey.
First, I'm going to take you up to the inhospitable mountains. Then I'm going to let you go. Yeah.
I think him saying something to you, like, he can still have plans to essentially use Arid Gorgoroth to cover his travels west. Like, that's still a totally fine thing for him to be doing, which is essentially what you have him doing. This just giving him more motivation to be looking to cover his tracks, more explicit motivation to be covering his tracks.
Yeah,
I think a wise way to go.
And sorry, Marie, go ahead.
In the published Silmarillion, the decision to go to Doriath happens when he sees Doriath.
Right.
But also the decision to Narghathron happens when he sees Narghathron. So there's a lot of Beren walked out the door and saw something and said, I'll go that way. In the story as written. So we don't have to keep that without other motivations.
And then he walks into the forest and says, hey, look, a girlfriend, right?
Right.
Yeah. This is kind of how Beren rolls.
Pretty much.
It's handy, that.
But I think we could keep the decision at the point where he sees Doriath.
Yeah.
If he's looking down to Doriath in the south and he's looking back behind him and realizes, wait, I can't take all this to Brethil with me. Here's another place I can go. I think we can still keep the decision there. It just needs to be to protect Brethil instead of that looks like fun.
Right,
I mean, that's not what he says.
But, exactly. Yeah. I know that's not what he. That's obviously in objecting
to keep
to
that decision point where it is. I think is okay, just as long as we add to it there, and he can think of it when he didn't think of it before. I mean, it's okay to think of new things.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say, and this goes along with what Nick was saying about the fact that this would be in the indirect route to Anach anyway. Brethil is also south, right, of Turnailoan. So, step one, go south to the Arid Gorgoroth. Then he's got his decision point, right? Now, do I go, do I now, cut east and go and head for the pass, or do I or do I do the unexpected even to himself before that moment plan of continuing on across the mountains? Having it be a more spontaneous plan is not only, Marie, as you point out, more Beren-like, but also I think I would question if he were in Turnailoan and sitting there and being like, okay, here I am in Turnailoan. What's the best plan? Where should I head from here? Oh, I know. I think I'll cross the inaccessible peaks of Arid Gorgoroth. That sounds like a plan. Who says no, right? I don't think that he sets out with that plan. But if he's already there, right? He's already there for a perfectly defensible reason, but then has new realizations, thinks these things through in new ways, and then boom, sees Doriath, right? Now his decision is made for him, both for the negative reasons and the positive reasons. And he, with the addition of that, like, I'm going to make the risky move in order to protect, the refugees in Brethil. I think that works. And so we can keep the dog story intact, most importantly. So I think that's good. That'll work. Okay. Now, once he's in Nandon Gortheb, I'm coming back to our need for Beren, for Beren's awesomeness to be established, right? because again, it's really like, so let's remove this entirely from Beren's resume for a second. Right? Let's perform a thought exercise, and we remove this episode from Beren's resume. What else is left on it? He's going to fall in love, right? She's going to fall back in love with him, which is not entirely his fault, right? And then he's going to wander off and ask for help, which is going to be given to him. He's going to get immediately captured. And then he's going to be sitting there helplessly while first Finrod and then Luthien intervene to rescue him, right? Then he has one action hero moment with Beren's Leap, which is cool, right? But then after that, he's going to decide to not head off, be turned into a werewolf by his girlfriend again, get with her up to Angband, accompany her, doing very little, until he hides beneath the throne of Morgoth, cuts the Silmaril off of the crown after Morgoth is already comatose, and then he's going to stand in defiance of Karkaroth, which is another important line on his resume, right? And after that, he's going to participate with Huon, Thingol, Maglor, and Beleg in the hunt for the wolf at the end, which he will fight valiantly in, but will be killed. In other words, his hero resume is pretty light if you look at it from a certain point of view, right?
So one caution I have is there's a trap that I've noticed happens a lot in some film discussions of what I'm going to call, this is the very first episode-itis.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Which we have a tendency to look at the episode that we have in isolation and maybe think about stuff that's happening in the future to the exclusion of stuff that's already happened. So I'm going to go back a few steps and add a few things to his resume, such as participating in the Dagor Bragollach and the rescue of Finrod. He's present at the giving of the ring. Sure, it's not given to him, but he's there, and he's one of the people that goes into Dorthonion to help rescue the people that have been left behind.
These things are all good for a best supporting actor resume.
Right. Absolutely. And then, of course, he's in Dorthonion, helps rescue people, gets specifically chosen as the prime scouting team to find new people to rescue. Right? He is the guy for being out in the wilderness by himself. Then it goes in to the camp of orcs that just slaughtered all of his companions and kills the head honchos, essentially, like the biggest, baddest, toughest orcs of the bunch.
But that's part of this episode, which we are excluding from his resume. But yeah, no, I hear you. I'm not saying he's an absolute nobody and that everything rests on this. But what I would say, if
this doesn't work,
if he's not heroic at the end of this episode, there's not going to be much time for him. And Beren is a fascinating hero character in any way, right? I mean, he's this is another okay, this is a sidebar, but I don't care, I'm going to say it anyway. This is one of the reasons why the parallel between Frodo and Beren in The Lord of the Rings is really fascinating, right? Because on the one hand, Beren seems like a very different kind of hero to Frodo in the one sense, right? Or to say it the other way around, Frodo doesn't seem a whole lot like Beren, right? He's not like one of the, Beren is listed as one of the, the great elf friends, right? In the Hall of Fame, the Circle of Honor listing that Elrond gives at the end of the Council of Elrond, right? And Frodo does not seem like a mighty elf friend in the line of Beren. And once again, we get that, we get a Beren reference. Murray, you'll help me remember this with Shelob and Sam. The hand of Beren or Turin wielded it, right?
Yes. Yeah. But that's for Sam more than.
That's for Sam, I know. But the point is, like, Beren is held as like icon of strength of hand and power as a warrior, right? Which is again another.
And Frodo and Sam talk about Beren
exactly. Yeah.
About how his story is like a great story, and wow,
exactly.
they're still in it.
Yeah, and Frodo is plainly the Beren figure with the dismemberment and everything else. But anyway, it's a really interesting parallel because, of course, both of them are also not heroic in the normal ways, right? Like they're not. He's not a Turin style. Beren is not a Turin style action hero in his story, right? Again, not that he never does anything, but that's not what he's like. It's not what he's famous for. You know, Turin is famous for his prowess in battle, and then ultimately the great feat of killing the dragon, right? Beren has like nothing like that on his resume. Not the same. I mean, he never single-handedly comes and like turns the tide of a battle or so. Like, we just don't see him doing that kind of thing. Beren himself, right? So
are we sure Elrond wasn't making a tongue-in-cheek comment about Beren's resume?
I definitely think that the Circle of Honor that Elrond mentioned, I think the criterion for entry into that Circle of Honor are not necessarily what people necessarily think. Of course, Turin is the great question mark, right? Like, why exactly is he in the Hall of Fame in the same way with, Tuor, Beren, okay, right, I got it. But anyway, whatever. That's a sidebar off the sidebar.
Heroism and the greater concept of heroism in Tolkien, I mean, Isildur always comes across as a very heroic figure in the way the characters within the story discuss him.
Yes.
And again, there's maybe some question marks on his resume but did he make good choices at the end there? Mm-hmm. Some. Right. So I think that Tolkien is presenting us with heroes that are not clear-cut action figure, no question marks on them. So we put some question marks on Beren, some really big ones, but part of what we were doing is trying to deal with the guy's trauma.
Yes.
You don't just walk into your home and find everyone you've been living with slaughtered and have no reaction to that. Right. Or if you do, there's a word for that. Anyway,
it's not a good look. Yeah.
I mean, there's some stuff going on. So he's not going to sit down with a counselor and talk this all through. He's not going to have time to process all of his stuff in a healthy way. He's got vengeance and more trauma.
Right.
And so that's what we present.
And a service dog, which is nice. But we did try to have a little bit of assistance here. Yeah.
Someone else to take care of.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. And I like all that. So spiders. Giant spiders. Let me ask the question this way. What would you say were the primary goals of the Beren with the spiders sequences? What were you wanting to accomplish for our relationship with Beren's character through the spider sequences?
Sense of horror. First thing, that's really what we're going for there, rather than
we want to help people to feel the Ered Gorgoroth experience, right?
Right, which we've been through Ered Gorgoroth a few times so far, and
through the Nandungortheb.
We've been through that place, right?
Yes,
a few times so far, and Aredhel, Maeglin, and Ael had virtually no trouble. The Haladin had
lots of
major trouble, right?
Yeah.
But both of those parties were traveling laterally where there is a road, right? There's a track that goes through there that's relatively safe. Now, we have in this episode, on a slide that we haven't gotten to yet, established that Nandungortheb has become more dangerous than it was in the past. Because Maedhros has sent scouts out there this was back in episode 1, wasn't it? right?
Yeah.
He sent scouts out there who never came back. They feature in this episode.
Yes.
I was about to say, Dylan, tell us about the scouts.
Yeah.
Oh, about the scouts. Yes, there are scouts. You see them hanging upside down. The point of that is to be like, oh, one, like, Sons of Feanor here.
Right. Yeah.
If audiences are paying attention, they'll be like, oh, hey, Mithros sent some scouts out in episode 1 and they didn't come back. And 2, to be like, oh, yeah, people on the road are getting wound up by spiders now. Like,
right.
The road is not safe.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like, again, this is to foster the terror of Narghathron, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, not to mention, we don't have a lot of scenes in here, right?
Right.
Right. So we have fairly minimal time to express what we're looking to get at here. And also, once he is captured, the goal is to express his grief, which we didn't get a chance to do before because he's not on a one-man rampage for 5 years.
Right. Right. Okay. So walk me through the Shelob element of the story. I loved bringing back Shelob. That seems very natural. We introduced Shelob. Was that season 3? It was season 3. Back when we established she was there when the Girdle of Melian went up at the beginning. Right there, in fact. And the... What status did we give Shelob exactly? She wasn't... Was...
Daughter of...
Yeah, she's a daughter of Ungoliant, I know, but like in relationship to the other spiders, I mean. Was she she didn't have like I mean, they're not exactly like a community.
Yeah,
precisely.
There's no real hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a pecking order, sure, and she's probably at or near the top.
At or near the top, yeah. Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure, because it's not a no-brainer. I mean, like the last, child of Ungoliant to trouble the world, it doesn't mean that she was always the biggest and baddest child of Ungoliant, right? And in fact, it would be kind of Tolkienian for her to be in the First Age, kind of not a huge deal, but in the Third Age, by the time she survives into the Third Age, she's now like indescribably enormous. Compared to everything else in the Third Age. But still, I do think that, I mean, but I remember we had her in a sort of quasi-leadership position, like with Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel, sort of negotiating with her.
Spider we used to communicate with Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel, because why not? But quasi-leadership at best. There's not a lot of leadership going on.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right.
They're definitely not a work together kind of group.
Right.
So
right, for sure.
They're more like an eat your siblings kind of group.
Which is what gets emphasized in this encounter, right?
Right. So yeah, and spiders, like anything that molts, get larger every time. So by the time we get to the Third Age, Shelob is larger than she is here in the First Age.
Right. She's physically larger. Yes. Okay. So we're emphasizing Beren's grief. Okay, well, let me just ask like the obvious question. Why doesn't he kill a whole bunch of spiders?
Because he's trapped and loses his sword.
Well,
right.
But we made that choice, right? So like, so the main reason is to avoid losing the terror, right? Okay. Because essentially he thinks he sees people who are going to help him, and it turns out it's a bunch of Feyenorian wind chimes, and
right. Which is
and
how they should be listed in the credits, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he winds up himself getting snagged. Now, if we wanted that to kind of break out into a chase scene where he winds up like escaping from a bunch of like dog-sized spiders to, which he kills a bunch of and escapes from the rest of them, right? And winds up like in a funnel web of a horse-sized spider. That might work. I don't know about how I would have to look at how our time index is of that scene. I don't think it's very long though.
So there are a couple issues. Number one, how many more times are we going to get the opportunity for hand-to-hand combat with spiders, giant spiders? Not very often, right? I don't know if this is necessarily the very last time, but I don't...
A while.
A long time, right? I mean, I'm not sure I can think of a single other instance in the Tolkien canon. I mean, we can pull them out if we need to at some other point. I mean, they would be a resource still available to us at some future point in the First Age or Second Age. But this is one of our last big spider stories from the actual canon of the Silmarillion.
Right. I mean, Greenwood the Great becoming Mirkwood probably has some spider story to it.
There's some involvement there, for sure.
Right.
Right.
But that is still quite far in the future from this point. So
right.
Yeah, we'll have a gap.
Wait, yeah. So here's one of the things that I'm thinking. We have as so often happens in film, right? Instead of just planting seeds, which we're hoping to bring to payoff later on, we have built-in payoff that we want to set up earlier on. And here, of course, I'm thinking of Sam and Shelob, right? That the parallel here, now I know I was just saying before that Frodo is the obvious parallel to Beren, and he is, but in this moment, right, that's why I think Tolkien recalls Beren's hand when we're talking about the spider, right? Sam's hand is compared unflatteringly, of course, under the circumstances, to the hand of Beren and of Turin when he's trying to stab Shelob from underneath, right? And the point of contrast there, right? You couldn't puncture that. Nobody could have successfully slashed open Shelob's belly with the sword. Not even if the strength of if the hand of Beren or of Turin were to have wielded the blade. And why those two, right? Not just because they were both wicked, powerful warriors, but because Turin successfully killed Glaurung by stabbing him up from underneath, and because Beren successfully killed giant spiders. Like, he's the most second, arguably most famous giant spider killer if you count Eärendil, which of course you only count if he kills Ungoliant in like some of the early versions, like he does. But assuming Eärendil does not kill Ungoliant, then that makes Beren the number one most famous spider killer in history, from the vantage point of the Lord of the Rings. This is why I'm feeling like, so this is one reason why I'm feeling like he totally needs to kill a spider. The second reason that I think he needs to kill a spider is that, again, like, we have the opportunity to set up the fight between Sam and Shelob, right? We have an opportunity to do one of those wonderful, wonderful things, right? Where we can do a thing in the Film project, which adds a new layer of meaning to an already amazingly awesome scene in The Lord of the Rings, right? And I think we have to take advantage of that with the spiders and Beren. I don't know as usual, I don't have any actual suggestions, but I think So this is where I kind of wave my hand and say, I think you guys should come up with something awesome here. That would be really cool. But do you see what I mean, though? Like, when we're seeing Sam fighting, like, my ideal here is that we see Sam fighting Shelob eventually. And the audience is like, oh my gosh, flashback, Beren, season 6, right? And that we've managed to visually juxtapose Sam in that moment and Beren in this moment is really cool. Besides which, holy cow, huge, hang on, just thought of something awesome, right? Grief, right? That grief of Beren that he's been feeling in this moment will help to anticipate the grief of Sam right after that moment, right? Sam's not had his grief yet, right? But when Sam Sam having just fought giant spiders and grieving for Frodo, whom he thinks is dead, right? There's a lot of rich Sam and Beren stuff that we can do here, right? So I would love to see if we could play that up a little bit more. And I think that means he has got to fight and kill a spider.
Okay. I mean, obviously he can't kill Shelob.
No. She's right out. She's right out.
You're correct in that there are many other unnamed spiders in this valley that are available for killing off.
Totally available. Yeah.
As long as we don't actually have Beren win.
Right. Like
the rule of horror is you can't win.
Right.
So he can be awesome and he can be very successful at killing spiders, and then he loses.
And then he loses. Yeah. No, I totally accept that. And if, by the way, the coolest thing is if Sam defeats the spider that Beren couldn't defeat, right? I mean, like, that's awesome. Come on, that's really awesome.
Especially if Beren, because we've been talking about him losing or otherwise damaging his sword. If like a big chunk of his sword gets flung out when he hits Shelob's carapace, like if he just ring and like there's just like this huge chip cut out of the thing.
I mean, there's no way. No, I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do there. I totally agree about the not winning. That's fine. I'm not like suggesting that, he like chops all the spiders to pieces and then like does the hero stroll out in slow motion, right, amidst all the corpse of the spiders. No, it doesn't have to be like that at all. And I do understand when there are monsters chasing somebody and you kill one of the monsters, that's kind of a psychological turning point, right? It's hard to maintain the same level of sort of terror as when the monsters are just chasing you, right? So I do recognize that. I do acknowledge the risk, at least, of undermining the horror by having him even locally and temporarily triumphant, right? But in my opinion, losing the opportunity to have Beren establish himself as the giant spider slayer, which again, this becomes a big item on his resume, honestly, right? The spider slayer thing. And one of the reasons why Luthien and others are going to say Beren is all that, because nobody else could have done that. Nobody else could have made that trip, right? I mean, it's one of the effects. It's one of the things that I really love about what did you call them, Nick? The Feyenorian wind chimes? Yes. It's one of the things that I love about the Feyenorian wind chimes thing. The Feyenorians, they're huge, right? I mean, like, the Feyenorians are a big deal. They're the greatest warriors of all of the Noldor, who are the greatest of everybody, right? And the whole crew of them, right, have been taken out by these giant spiders. Yeah. So this is a chance for Beren really to establish himself for the viewers and for everybody else. And yet, so if I had to choose, honestly, between the horror and the establishment of Beren Hero Spider Slayer, I'm going with Beren Hero Slayer. I'm not saying we have to choose, right? But if I had to risk one or the other, I'm risking the horror rather than risking the heroism. Myself.
As long as any spider that he kills is like noticeably smaller than the spider that gets him and Shelob, then I think that's not a huge problem for us.
He can't kill a big one.
I mean, they can be big. Come on, how big does this thing need to be? Like,
I feel like I feel like I'm in some sort of negotiation, right? Okay, he can kill a spider, but only a small one. Can we get a medium-sized spider? Can we settle on a medium-sized
spider? If the spider's the size of the chair, that's enormous.
I was looking at the comments where you and Dennis were talking about how a dog or a horse or even a dog-sized spider is terrifying, and of course, if you ask my wife, a spider-sized spider is terrifying. So, I get it. I get it. I understand.
If a spider the size of like a small rabbit came into my house, I'm gonna move. Right.
Right. I get it. No, you're absolutely right.
I'm
just don't move to Australia.
Yeah. Just don't move to Australia, where that's a small spider, right? Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't even notice those. Okay. I'm not denying that spiders of almost any serious magnitude are terrifying. What I am saying is, let's say there's 2 or even 3 very large spiders. I want him to kill a boss spider, okay? I want a boss spider killed by Beren. I don't want him offing a lackey spider. I don't want him killing an extra, right, who doesn't even get a line in the credits. I want a boss spider. It can't be Shelob. Obviously, can't be Shelob. Right, I would love to see him fight Shelob ineffectually. Right, in fact, it would be fun to have Shelob be where he loses.
Why is it ineffectual if he's able to kill other spiders of the same magnitude?
Because so first of all, the spider slaying, it's not a science, spider slaying. Right, so it's not like if like a person who can kill one giant spider can easily at will kill any number of giant spiders, right? Like, he is in a situation where he is both valiant and resourceful and also probably lucky, right? And gets an opportunity which he takes. Again, not unlike Sam. Like, how does Sam defeat Shelob, right? Sam doesn't defeat Shelob simply by being becoming the great elf warrior or something, right? And just like wading in and takingar down. There's other things and luck involved, right? So he could be like, I don't know if he's being pursued or if he's being ensnared, like maybe anyway, there's like some opportunity that arises that enables him through his own strength and fortitude to slay the one spider. But this doesn't mean that, like, again, now it's going to be trivial for him to square off against multiple other giant spiders. Like, it's
but when you see it on the screen, it's going to be like, well, why was this one different? What was special about that one? Right? Like, that's my issue, is like there has to be some differentiating factor that's visible to the viewer.
Okay.
Would it be acceptable if he kills, a medium-sized spider and then encounters a large spider?
Yeah.
Which he also is able to kill, but prior to him killing it, this spider bites him and he is now infected with spider venom. And then he sees the wind chimes, and then he is captured, and then he goes down.
No. The wind chimes are the reveal, like, of the whole
of the spider.
Yeah. So,
right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's other clues like spider webs and whatnot, but like this is
I thought we were moving up the encounter with spiders before the.
No. This is all got to be after the wind chime. The encounter with the
I'm not
wind
arguing
chimes.
sequence, and the way you guys want to build this up, I'm totally fine with this. So, Marie has a perfectly fine, like, so one answer to the question, to your question, Nick, then, right, is he kills the first giant spider, but in the act of killing it is almost wholly incapacitated by through injuries and or venom, right? He survives the first giant spider, which is a huge accomplishment, right? That doesn't mean he can line up giant spiders for the rest of the day, right?
The more that hit you, the more that will.
Yeah, exactly, right. So this is where it's sort of not like D&D where you can fight all the way to 1 hit point at full capacity, right? So
Right.
that's that. So I mean, and I think that would be enough, right? I mean, if he's injured. Right, so here's Beren now, like limping and also possibly poisoned, and then Shelob comes in. Right,
he doesn't. Right, Dennis asks, "How does he get away?" He doesn't actually get away. So Shelob winds up being the spider that keeps him, right? That keeps him ensnared. But he's able to wait. He's able to wake up. And however we have him wake up in the script as it is, I don't remember exactly, but. He's able to wake up. He gets free. He has a brief fight with Shelob where his sword gets broken on her hull, and he escapes. He beats feet as there's been a lot of D&D discussions in the chat around this episode, because this Beren's journey in this episode is very D&D adventure. There's no question.
This episode is like a solo one shot here.
And the wind chimes idea, the Feyenorian wind chimes idea, is straight out of a
right.
It's like that is from the mind of a DM.
That would be part of the italicized description that the DM reads aloud, basically when you get to that place there.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed. So again, so we wouldn't want his legs too incapacitated, or he's not going to be able to escape.
He recovers. Like he heroically pulls himself out of the stupor,
right,
and recovers,
and bravely runs away.
He gets and he bravely runs away after that. Right. He gets 2 moments. He kills a big spider, and he beats the venom after a long while.
There you go. And survives Shelob and gets away. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm great. As long as I get, I'm fine. As long as I get a reasonably sized spider that he kills. The reason I keep coming back to this, I'm not trying to be just silly about this.
I know.
Nobody else does this. Like, this is like, seriously, who else kills an enormous giant spider in the entire history of Tolkien's canon? Like, that's Beren's job. Like, it's one of his jobs.
And Bilbo and Sam.
Well, no, but Bilbo kills the mini spiders. He gets the medium-sized ones, right? Bilbo gets the medium-sized spiders. Well, maybe those are smalls. I'm not sure. I think they might be smalls. But in any case, they're no more than medium for sure. And then Sam. So like it's like Sam and Beren. Like that's it. Like Sam and Beren are the only two, these folks who like faced one of these gigantic spiders and lived. Yeah. Okay. I'm fitly mollified. as long as we can come to an agreement about the death of the spiders. So, okay. Yes. Let's yeah. Oh, and I know Shelob doesn't die in the Lord of the Rings, Dennis. I know that she doesn't die, but that's okay.
Not right away, anyway, that we know of.
Yeah, that doesn't make Sam's triumph any less heroic, especially under the circumstances. Right? I mean, that's one of the great sort of things about the Sam Shelob confrontation is that it's like, the world has been declining. Right, you have like the great elf warriors of old, right, and then like all the way at the end of the line, you have Sam the gardener, right, from the Shire, whereas Shelob has been only increasing over time, right? So she is a survivor of the First Age who is like as great now, at least as great now as she ever was in the First Age, and here's Sam, the distant echo of the stalwart warriors of the First Age, and yet Sam still beats her, right? So he doesn't have to kill Shelob in order to earn his stripes, but Beren totally does. I think. Anyway, Jason has a great question. Is there a distinction between the terror of Ered Gorgoroth and Nendun Gortheb, or is it spiders all the way down? Great question. I was going to ask that too. Are we doing anything with the rock climbing element of Nenda? Like the mere fact that he's going to be, successfully crossing these even before the spiders attack, or?
We did not include the matter of the rock climbing in this. We see him starting down and we see him at the bottom. And
Right.
Yeah.
We could fix that though. That's not that hard. Like
All we need is
like
a shot. Yeah.
Or a series of shots.
Yeah. It would be. You wouldn't even need dialogue for that. Just basically a little montage to establish that, like, even before he gets to the spider business, what he's done in making it across Ered Gorgoroth is like something that people don't do. But, yeah. Okay. Great. How do we, my last Beren question, which is about time for my last Beren question, crossing the Girdle. Tell me about Beren crossing the Girdle. What exactly are we gonna see?
Right. So I remember vague things about discussing the Girdle from my binge of the first 5 seasons.
Yeah.
But so what I had basically been envisioning was lots of mist and and magical resistance somewhat to his entry, and I don't know what that looks like. I mean, in my head, I was picturing, like the mist, I guess, is physically pushing against him, but that that sounds a little hokey now that I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, it's right, as Captain Button is asking, is the Girdle a force field thing, a get turned around and lost thing, or forget what you're doing thing? We've talked about this a few times.
It turned around and lost has been kind of where we've landed, where like it's one of those things where you walk in and then when you feel like you've gone through, you come out facing the opposite direction, essentially. Like, like there's a lot of, didn't we pass that tree like 14 seconds ago?
Right.
There's some rubber banding going on. Like it's different experiences for different people, obviously. But
So we wanted to use it here as an opportunity to kind of bring together the theme for the episode.
Right.
But I think what we can do with that is we can have sort of Beren being, there, and then whenever the Girdle's like about to like pop him right outside again, he's like, wait a minute, that's the outside. It's a matter of his like force of will allowing him to like recognize what's going on, kind of, I think might be part of it.
Yeah, how he crosses, like what it is that enables him to cross. I mean, Tolkien describes that just about as vaguely as you possibly can, right? It was his fate. Okay.
God made it happen.
What does that look like exactly, right? That does seem to be the challenge. And this seems to be a place where I don't think we necessarily want that to be, this is the final testimony to his awesomeness, right? The final, crossing the Girdle, on the one hand, it's kind of a big thing on his resume, but also it's kind of not him either, right? I mean, again, he's like the victim as much as the actor, right? The agent, or the patient as much as the agent here of the whole crossing the Girdle thing. He is enabled to get across, but not, I think, 100% by his own power. I don't know that we necessarily need to convey that in this moment while he's crossing. I was a little surprised by the way that Luthien came in at the end.
Mm. Yeah.
That was, but it doesn't count as cheating because he doesn't see her yet, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And it also, it helps mitigate some of the issues with the other stuff if she has encountered him first.
Think I see.
So
just
she's
where
already
you're going
super aware of him and whatnot.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's come back and talk about that more when we talk about the beginning of episode 4 then. I think that that choice will make most sense to discuss then. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. In fact, I think even in some sense, I think even coming back to the issue of him getting across the girdle, I think is a good, maybe we save that a little bit too.
Okay.
Kind of think about that more in the context of next episode. Okay. Besides which, I really need to move on to Narghathron Politics Part 1. Narghathron Politics Part 1. So we have here that direct conflict between Curufin and Celeborn and Finrod, right? Tell me about it. I mean, it's clear that this is designed to be a plain stage in the progression, right? Towards what's ultimately the ultimate usurpation, right? One of the things that became clear to me while I was reading this, which I thought was really great, right, is I felt like we got a significant payoff of a decision we made early in the season, right? And that is for Celegorm and Curufin to be on a military expedition, right? They have an army with them. And that I felt that payoff immediately in this episode, right? Because one of the answers to the question, why should anyone give so much weight to Celegorm and Curufin, what Celegorm and Curufin say? They're guests, right? They're not like, why should anybody care what they say? Why should they have any particular influence other than perhaps their personal charisma, right? Why should they have any particular? And we've provided an answer to that because they have an army, right? Because they have an army and are doing stuff with that army, right? And that, I felt that worked really well as a way to kind of sort of suggest opening up a split in Narghathron, right? So because if I'm understanding it properly, the sort of implication is that the Narghathrondrim, which is a word I have a very hard time pronouncing correctly, that does not roll off my tongue, but the Narghathrondrim are getting like just the tiniest bit fed up with the isolationism. They want to go back. Like basically, it's the way that you guys seem to be setting it up is that the more active and aggressive policies, like we've got a plan, like we're going to do something and we have a plan and we have an army to pull that plan off, right? And we're going to do something and Finrod is like, no, I don't want to do it. I just want to like, that where at least it kind of looks like he's saying, to some people it would look like he's saying, I kind of want to do nothing, right? And that the people in Narghathron are getting less and less thrilled with that after the setback of Tol Sirion and the refugees come and everything is horrible. And what are we going to do? And what are you doing about this, Finrod? And he's like, nothing. And Celegorm and Curufin have a plan, right? Or at least look like they have a plan. Am I getting that properly? Is that what was meant to come across?
Not really. At least
No.
not for the way I was writing. I don't know how everybody else was necessarily thinking about it. The intention was at least partially that there's Celegorm and Curufin are very good at rhetoric, I think, is part of the deal here.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
so and so their plan, like, they're presenting this to the people in a way that sounds like, super cool and like super, we're gonna, wise up, and like, we've got this whole thing, and like, we should retake Telserian and all that. And the people of Narghathron, like, on a certain level, yes, they are like, yes, let's keep going in the war with Morgoth. But on another level, like, there's Finrod, I don't think, in at least the way I wrote him, is less isolationist and more just, he's very diplomatic about things.
Right.
So like, he's not going to look at, I mean, for one, he's not going to look at war as the first answer. But second, once this involves, putting armies in, occupied, sovereign territory, he's, and that's the main issue with this. We can't just have Finrod be like, no, he's got to have a reason for it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, he can't actually appear to, I mean, like, we don't want the viewers turning against Finrod. Yeah.
And the other thing is that there's one of the things that in the edits especially we were trying to, emphasize was that Finrod the Seabros have a plan, but it's like, it's a little rushed, and like, you have people like Orodreth and to a certain extent Celebrimbor, being like, okay, we're fine with the principle, but let's think about this. And so part of Finrod's deal is just being like, not now, I think.
Right. Okay.
And Orodreth's, the main thrust of Orodreth's argument is like, look, you don't know what we're up against. I've seen it and I still don't know what we're up against. Right. And so we need to figure out what's going on before we start getting ready to like move on Telserian, especially if it means we're going to be quartering our soldiers in the homes of the people of Brethil, who, I'm here to tell you, aren't huge fans of that sort of thing.
Right.
Whereas Celegorm and Curufin are basically like, look, it's for their own good. Like, they need us for protection. They have no armor and weapons. Like, if the orcs go into Brethil, they're just gonna get rolled. Right.
But so what is attractive about Celegorm and Curufin's proposal to other people?
It's action. It's doing a thing.
It's doing a thing. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's the main attraction. It is doing a thing better than doing no things. Right.
Yeah, that's the general trend that I was seeing. Exactly. I mean, it is a really interesting and delicate line to walk, because we don't want to turn the viewers against, we don't want to actually make Finrod look like a git in contrast to Celegorm and Curufin. But at the same time, I don't think we want to make the people of Narghathron as a whole look stupid and fickle and mindless, right? If there has to be some kind of substance to their ultimate preference, choice, to support Celegorm and Curufin over Finrod himself, right? Which means, in particular, Finrod's declaration that he is going to help Beren has to be, to the people of Narghathron, the last straw, right?
Yeah.
And so what we need to be seeing here are the first straws, right?
He's putting the needs of men over the needs
and that's Finrod all over, right? I mean, first we took those fleabag humans into Narghathron for a long time, right? And then they left, ingrates.
Because they were like they were sitting around doing nothing.
Right, they were sitting around doing nothing.
Good at anything.
I know, they were being useless, and then they just went off to be useless elsewhere, and then he's all worried like it's more important to be like, oh, maybe we're going to be discourteous to the humans than we're going to like actually take any chance of doing anything to restore Tolsirian or whatever. And now he's going to throw everything under the bus for the sake of, then this one guy comes in and he's like, oh, hi, so I'm going to like abandon the entire kingdom in order to, help this one dude. Right. And they're like, okay, that's the end of the human favoritism nonsense that we're putting up with. I like it. That's a good through line, which of course is amplified nicely by the changes we've made in the past there. Yeah, okay. No, I like that. But yeah, but as I say, it's a delicate line, right? Because we need to sympathize with Finrod, right? We need to see and to know that but yet we need to be enough able to understand the perspective of the people of Narghathron that it doesn't seem like it's out of nowhere. And it doesn't seem crazy for them to just throw their weight behind Curufin and Celgorm in the end. Okay. That works. That makes sense. All right. I'm rushing through, but we're at the part of the show where I rush. Doriath. I loved the Anail resolution here. I mentioned this at the beginning. Bringing in Elrond is excellent. Tell me more about, though, big picture, what you guys were hoping to accomplish in Doriath specifically, because it's important as we're setting up Doriath for what's about to come, right? So what were some of the specific things about Doriath and the Doriath characters that you were trying to really kind of cement in our readers' minds here? Because we got this, then we've got the bottle episode, and then we're back to Doriath, right, with Beren and stuff. So what were you guys trying to do here with Doriath and the Doriath characters?
Obviously it's Anail's plot, so most of the rest of the stuff had to be, kind of adjacent to that. Mm-hmm. So we begin with, the return of the Sindar who were fighting the Dagor Bragollach and at Tolsirian, I think, to Doriath, and then there's this sort of through line that we added, where Gil-galad's in Doriath for a reason. Like, as ambassador, he's got to like establish relations with the realm that he's ambassador to. Mm-hmm. So we have this line that's like brought up at points throughout the story. You've Gil-galad like talking to Thingol and all that. We like see, quote unquote, the tail end of that conversation, but like it's not really there. And the gist is basically Gil-galad's talking to Thingol. Thingol's like, yeah, and I'm not sending the Sindar into huge danger again so soon. Right. Definitely. And then that's the main deal. We have bits of Thingol and Melian and Luthien, but they're really not a focus right here. Okay.
But we do still get like a final reinforcement of Thingol not being interested, right? Thingol's at the very least not being helpful here, right?
Right. We have glimpses of Thingol creating problems, Melian healing and knowing a lot of stuff that other people don't know, and Luthien still a background character, but having her joy and love of life on display. So we have little glimpses of that whole family that are supposed to encapsulate what the audience is supposed to know about them going into the Doriath episode.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know it's hard. I know when I feel increasingly guilty asking probing questions like about the C plot, which you get like 2 scenes to try to accomplish, maybe. So yeah, I know that there's not much space to do too much work in the C plot, but
we also get an opportunity to remind the audience of who and what Melian is.
Yes,
which
nice.
I
think is overdue. I mean, when was the last time we really had Melian doing a Melian thing? It would be the Girdle, but
Galadriel,
her time with Galadriel. Season 4, yeah. Where she was introduced to the whole proto mirror of Galadriel, the mirror of Melian thing, right? Yeah, that whole thing. Right, yeah. So, yeah, we got that in season 4. We didn't get much Melian in season 5.
No, we didn't get much Doriath in season 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there were no humans in it.
Right.
So yeah, we only see them in one episode responding to the existence of humans, so it's pretty light.
Right. So definitely, I agree. That's what I loved about bringing Melian into the Anile story, is that it enables us to reestablish Melian doing Melian things, as you say. And I think that's important, as well as reminding people about this whole proto Mirror of Galadriel thing that's going on, which is good. Okay. Anile is exiling himself.
Because he doesn't know for certain that he can be trusted. And in fact, the elves themselves.
Right. Gilgalad was pretty unhappy about it. Yeah.
Because he directly saw the results. Like he was right there. And that, as far as he's concerned, that just happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't yesterday, but like elves, like that just happened.
Yeah. It did just happen. Yeah. Yes. And Gilgalad would not really be in a, well, hang on. Gilgalad's sorry, I'm thinking about connections back to Angrod and Ethelos. Because they were connected. I'm thinking just back to the relations now with the our combined genealogies of Gilgalad and
Gilgalad's their
Orodreth
grandchild.
Yes.
But he may not know.
Right. Basically, so sorry, let me back up and walk you through exactly my thought process here. My first thought process was to say, because then Gilgalad is also probably not going to have a really nuanced idea about like elves being put, under this kind of a whammy, right? And so may be less sympathetic than he could possibly be if he understood better the kind of mental control that, the kind of thraldom that people can be placed under by the enemy. And then I was like, well, but hang on a second. Wait, that's why I was going back and doing the math in my head. And I'm like, would he have known? Like, how much would he have known about what happened with Ethelos? And would that be in any sense kind of triggering for him when he discovers this about Anile? And if so, in what direction? So that's what I was trying to think through.
Ethelos died before he was born. Okay. So he never knew her and certainly didn't know the details of her death.
Condition, yeah.
Right. Angrod knew.
Mm-hmm.
Angrod.
But Angrod didn't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it was not generally well known among the elves that this happened, or exactly what happened.
Which is why we needed this to happen with Anile, and for it to become public, because otherwise we've lost all of our opportunities.
Right. So the whole point was to establish why people were paranoid, and then we never have anybody find out about them. Yeah.
Right. So now people can start being paranoid.
Yes.
Anile's story is the one that becomes public knowledge.
Yes.
And that's something we're going to have to deal with next season. the spread of that knowledge and how people react to it. But this point, Anile and Gil-galad talking about it, is when this situation becomes a public situation instead of a private family situation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. It's really important that it become that way. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'm really looking for Anile again. Anile is a pretty cool minor character as we've developed him. He's
come a long way from being a picnicker.
He has. I mean, he's in a really sort of low profile way. He has had a pretty remarkable career through film so far, right? All the way back from, was that season 4, right? When he was picnicking. So this is his 3rd season now, being a minor character. And, going all the way through Tuor at the least, I would hope we'll do something to resolve his story. Unlike the Tuor text, we'll do something to resolve the story of Anile at the end. But
I also have a plan for him for next season too. Little thing.
Yeah. Good. Well, I would think that it would become relevant. Again, well, his son has got to be involved, obviously. So, no, I love the potential of the Anile story as we're developing it. Okay, awesome. No, I think that's really good. I was a big fan of how this came out, as I said at the beginning. And all right, we're getting late, so let us talk about the schedule moving forward. So we are meeting next week on the 25th, on the first Thursday night in which there is not a Rings of Power episode airing for some time now. But anyway, so we'll meet next Thursday, and we're going to be discussing the soundtrack. This is our commissioning episode, where we review all the impossible tasks that we set for Philip Menzies, give him some more, and discuss some of the things we were hoping to accomplish with soundtrack stuff. So that's always fun, talking about soundtrack stuff. So looking forward to that. Are we doing, is that going to be normal time, Murray? Was Philip able to make the normal time? Okay. All right.
Yes,
I know.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I know. Philip being in Australia, time zones are challenging there, but
he just had to clear it with work. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Great. Well, that will be that'll be fun. So next week on the 25th, we'll be thinking about that, so people can think on the discussion boards. People can talk about this if there are particular musical themes or connections, especially as we continue to move forward. It's not just about building individual sort of musical themes or motifs, right? It's also about the kinds of sort of connections and through lines that we're building between all. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to talking to Philip about next time. So awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Dylan, thank you for your work. I appreciate all of your effort in your script writing here. Did you have fun in your film debut there working on this episode?
I did. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that was great. So thanks for that. And I hope I appreciate all of your hard work binging to catch up with us. And I'm glad you're here joining the team. That's great fun. And awesome. And as always, thanks to Nick and Marie and Dave for joining us here this evening. And we will be, music, and then whenever we meet next, which we're figuring out, we'll be doing episode 4.
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
Depends when we're meeting next. So
we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, exactly. So I'm translating that as no promises. So we'll see.
We shall see.
We'll see. Very good. Hey, it's all part of the adventure. Anyway, Thanks, everybody. We will see you guys soon next week. And as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.